بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. نويت التعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم، ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم اللدني والمشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يغني. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم اللدني والمشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يغني. اللهم إنا نسألك العلم اللدني والمشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يغني. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين آمين آمين. Alhamdulillah, we are continuing with our book, right? Inshallah, we have come to a chapter, right, that is very, you would say, unique, right, in a way. But of course, it's actually, if you think about it, it is also something that should be common sense, right, when it comes to education, right, which is the fourth method, because this book speaks about 41 methods of teaching, right, from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and Shaykh Abu Fadl Abu Ghudda, right, he backs up every single method with a dalil from a hadith. Right, and he also analyzes the hadith, right, in length, right. For some hadith in length, for some hadith he gives a short commentary, right. So we are on to the fourth method, right, and the method is basically to understand the individual needs of every student. Right, that means to tailor your teaching, right, or what you inform your students, right, according to what they are able to take, right. So this is called basically individualized learning. And something that was done by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first hadith that we took is basically the hadith whereby Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam informed Sayyidina Mu'adh radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, right, about something, right, where and the hadith goes, that O Mu'adh, that whosoever says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, right, sincerely from his heart, then the fire of hell is haram on this person. Right, and Sayyidina Mu'adh said to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, should I inform the people so that they might rejoice? Right, and Rasulullah said no. Right, for surely some of them might take it, might misunderstand, or might take it lightly. They might become complacent, or they might take it for granted. They won't work hard. But later on, Sayyidina Mu'adh, towards the end of his life, he did relate the hadith, right, but he related the hadith with the correct understanding of the hadith, right, because what it means to have sincere, to say the shahada sincerely from your heart, right, it means that it has to show in your limbs, it has to show in your behavior, in your words, in everything about you, because it is sincerely in your heart, right. The likeness of someone who says shahada and then goes around and disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically like someone who is a hypocrite. Right, because you say something, you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is God, and you believe that Rasulullah is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and then all that you do is basically contrary to whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded and whatever Rasulullah has shown us. Right, then that shows that it's proof in itself that a person's heart is not sincere to the shahada. Right, so if someone holds the shahada properly, sincerely, then necessarily this person would be all of his actions will be dictated, right, by the shahada itself. And this person will actually find himself going towards paradise, right, if he's sincere to the shahada. So we were going into the different explanations, right, and one of the things that we mentioned previously was Imam Ghazali saying it is the duty of a teacher, right, to confine himself to the extent of the student's understanding, right, and not to impart to him such methods which intellect cannot fathom, right, else he will alienate himself from him or he will confuse him. Right, so basically it is actually, you will say, it's a crime in teaching, right, if a person were to expose someone else, right, to what he doesn't understand, right, and in fact he might misunderstand it. Right, there was once a student who came to his teacher and said, oh teacher, I'm going to read this book, right, and the teacher said, don't read this particular book, for I'm afraid that you'll find the story in the Book of Assistance. Imam Haddad mentions it in the Book of Assistance. Right? So he says, oh, teacher, I want to read this book, on the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And the teacher said, don't read that book, for I'm afraid that you might not understand some things in that book. Right? And then the student says, well, whatever I don't understand, I'll just leave it. And whatever I understand, I'll take it. Right? And the teacher said to him, it is that I fear you think you understand, that you take some things. You think you actually understand it, but you don't understand it. Right, so this is why the ulama do say that those who pick up books, or they read stuff online, without a teacher, right, then shaitan is his teacher, right? So it is it is dangerous, right, to read stuff, right, without a teacher there to explain it to you, right? So it's subhanallah, and it is the sunnah of our religion, right, that knowledge is imparted from teacher to student, right, from a teacher to explain it to the students so that you don't misunderstand what is being imparted. And on that note also, the teacher is able to look, right, and to see what can be imparted and what cannot be imparted to their students. And even then, sometimes when you hear translators, right, when they translate stuff, from the Arab world, right, for the Western world, you do see translators themselves, right, they will leave out certain things or they will rephrase certain things, right, so that it is more acceptable by the Western mind. Right, so they do that. They do that because they know their people. They know their people. They know what the Westerners are like, and Singapore is part of the Western world. And they know what they're like, what they're able to take, and what would be a fitna on them if they had heard, if they heard it, right? So they actually, in a sense, they rephrase it, right, or they leave it out altogether, right? Because the Western mind, is different, right, from those who have been brought up on the religion, for generations, generations on end, right? So it's different. So from the book, right, Muhammad the Perfect Teacher and Insight into Teaching Methods by Sheikh Abdul Fattah Bughudda, right, may Allah benefit us by him and by his knowledge in both abodes, where he has said, he says, and he backs up all that he's saying, even through Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, do not give your wealth to foolish people, right, because they're just going to waste your wealth, or they might harm themselves by the wealth that you give them, right, because they don't know how to use it, right? So similarly with knowledge, right, knowledge is basically you give to those people who are able to handle this knowledge, and those who are not able to handle it, they don't actually speak to them about this kind of knowledge, which is why it has been a fitna, right, that especially when it comes to the hadith sciences, right, many people comment on hadith and they've never learned hadith they've never studied hadith, right? So especially those who comment on hadith that are weak, that are sahih, that are gharib, they comment on the different quotation of the hadith, but they've never learned mustalah hadith, never studied the science of knowing whether a hadith, how is a hadith judged. They've never actually studied it, right? But by just seeing the translation, by seeing just the translation, right, of the hadith being hasan, sahih, right, and sometimes da'if, and sometimes with the English translation, it brings a different meaning, or it brings a different a different connotation of what it actually means, right? So when in hadith science, when you say it's a weak hadith, da'if, right, we don't mean the hadith is weak, right? Most of the time it means that the chain of narration, there's one person in there who is not 100%, right? That's what most likely it means, right? The chain of narration. Very rarely ulama actually narrate hadith whereby the meaning of the hadith is weak, right? Very, very rare, right? Whenever ulama narrate hadith, right, they only ever narrate hadith whereby the nas, I mean the passage of the hadith, right, is strong, right, and it does not contradict anything within the sharia, right? So when they say weak, right, what they're talking about is the chain of narration, right? And chain of narration doesn't mean that the hadith itself is weak, right? The hadith itself is, and weak doesn't mean not true, right? So people, the thing is that you try to explain to them over and over again, right? And the thing is that it's because from the very beginning they didn't learn all these sciences, and they've been commenting on all of these things, that it becomes a fitna to people, right? So he says here, right, a weak student should be taught such things that are clear and appropriate to his level of intellect, right, whatever he's able to take. And also from this point also, right, not to go too fast on weak students, right? If they are having problems memorizing, understanding, if they have their strength somewhere else, then it is on the teacher to actually note this, right? To know who can go further and who actually needs more time on a particular subject. Because we know as teachers, if you go further, right, if you keep pushing them, right, they just get left behind. That's all that's going to happen to them. And they'll not actually go on with you. They're going to be left behind. Right? And then after a while, when they're left behind enough, they lose hope, right? They give up, right? They leave it, right? Then they just turn off, right, by it. And that is what happens when students are forced, right, into a level that they are actually not ready for, right? So subhanallah, it's why, like, when you look into different conversations nowadays, right, on teaching, on homeschooling, on education on and so forth, right? Some of them, they do they do go to the extent of saying that, even when it comes to reading, right, observe your child, right? Because the last thing you want to do is to turn him off. The last thing you want to do is for them to be turned off. So you observe them, right? So I'm not going to put any age of what age is appropriate for them to be taught reading, but every child is an individual student, right? Every child is an individual student. So some children at a very young age, they show a lot of interest in wanting to read, and some children, if you try to force them on it, right, they begin to dread it. They begin to turn off, right? Whenever you try and push them, and then it becomes like an imprint in their minds. Till they grow, old, they just, the word reading becomes something very negative to them, right? So similarly, the Quran, Quran recitation, right? Whereby if it's first introduced in a very negative way, right? Whereby they're hit or they're scolded or they're, whatever, right? Then it becomes an imprint, right? And they will always associate negative feelings, right, to reciting the Quran. And it will take some time and understanding when they are older to actually undo that, right? To actually undo that and bring them back to the Quran when they understand it better, right? So the Shaykh Yusuf himself says that, if you can't find a good teacher to teach your kids Quran, right, and good meaning, not just in her tajweed, right, but also in her love for the Quran, it has to manifest, and also in her passion to teach this book, to allow other people to love this book. If you can't find someone to do that for your children, if it's not you, you can't find someone to do that for your children, then put it off until you do find someone. Because if you just put them under the hands of someone who can be harsh, right, onto them, or expect of them what is not of them. Sometimes they're very young, and sometimes you see that for these kids, right, they're just how many years old, and their teachers are so hard, on them, and as if you expect a 4-year-old to be better or a 5-year-old to be better than what they are. They're children, right? So sometimes the expectation, I've seen, some day I saw one father, right, say to a 4-year-old, when the 4-year-old was playing with his train set or whatsoever, right, and then this man was like, why are you doing it here? Can't you think? And then in my mind I was like, yeah, they can't think. They are 4, right? For them, wherever there's space, they make a track. So they won't think that you're in the way. There's people walking past. They're 4 years old, right? They make a track anywhere. They make a track. And then so he's like, can't you think? You can't think that this is going to be in the way of people. Now he realizes. But when he was making it, all he was thinking about is where the track can go. And there was all, so sometimes, and we get angry, right? But it's not within their capacity, to actually see that far, that what I'm doing is going to bother other people. And all they're thinking is that the track needs to go this way. That's all they're thinking. And sometimes as teachers, we need to be able to see, and from there you have mercy, right? Because you're seeing that, what, they're children, right? And that's the way they are. They like to make things funny, like to play a fool, it's the way they are, right? And so some of them, right? So from there you are able to see. And again, when you want to push, you need to be able to judge. You need to be able to gauge your child or your student, right? If you can push, you push. Right? If you can't push, then you have to hold back and you have to dwell on something longer. Right? This brings a lot of benefit in the homeschooling, because you actually control the pace. Right? You see what and trust me, if you control the pace, right, I don't think they're going to be lag behind. Don't think they're going to lag behind. They're not. They're not going to lag behind, right? It's just that you're combing out, right, where the tangles are, right? And whereas, if you just keep going with the syllabus without combing out the tangles, you get more tangles, like hair. Like hair, same thing. If you just, there's a tangle here, let it be. I'm just going to go to the second part of the hair and comb that part, right? But if you leave it long enough, the whole thing is going to be tangled up, right? If you don't work from the top, right? So same thing, mathematics, same thing. Like if you don't work on the algebra from the very beginning, then just I'd say you don't have to go further than that, right? And I have so many students, Sec 4, even in JC, the algebra, and that's from Sec 1 work, right? But it's never been combed out for them, right? They will push to the next chapter. So when they come to me at their Sec 4 and they're failing their math, I check Sec 1 work is still not combed out. It's still where it is, and they were passed, right? They were passed to move to the next stage, right? But it's not combed out, right, for them, and it's actually unfair onto the student, because the teacher keeps pushing, right? So when they reach a level, they don't actually have a basis, right, to be at that level, right? And it becomes frustrating, right, for the child, and then eventually the child might think that, I'm just not good at this. I just can't do this, I'm weak at this, and it's because of the very beginning, right, whereby it was not given to them properly, right? So he says here, right, so a teacher should not say to them that there are more intricate details in the matter and at the same time withhold this from him. By doing so, the teacher will cause the student to lose interest in the clear facts that have been taught to him, and this will disturb him emotionally. He would also view the teacher as to be acting miserly towards him, right? I don't tell them, later on you learn, other stuff and whatsoever, right? That the student might be wondering, is what I'm learning correct, not correct, right? That's what he's saying here. It is after all natural, right, for every person to think that he is worthy of knowing every intricate fact and detail. Right? Most human beings think that, and even when it comes to Hadith sciences, most human beings of our time think that I can just very well read this stuff and figure it out on my own. Right? You can't. You can't actually just read the stuff and figure it out on your own. You can't. Right? And if all the ulama have teachers, you also need a teacher. Right? No one is able to just pick up Hadith and just read it. Even the Sahaba were there in the presence of Rasulullah for them to understand, right, these Hadith. Intricate details should not be given to the masses. Rather, a teacher should only teach them the various acts of worship and the importance of honesty in the dealings when they are engaged, which they are engaged in all the time. He should fill their hearts with desire for paradise and the fear for hellfire, as the Quran does. He should not cause any doubts to develop, as these may remain in the heart and will be very difficult to remove, leading to wretchedness and destruction. Right, so here he's focusing directly on Islamic studies, Islamic teaching. Right, so and this is what we should focus on. Right, the Fardu Ain, right, why it's important for every person to know about their worship, and then transactions, right, that they get involved in. Right, and in a sense, don't even go into detail, right, until they actually need to go into detail. Right, you just give them whatever they need. Right, so they don't have to actually go into, like, for example, when I teach fiqh also, like when I speak about certain issues, I will specifically mention the Singapore context, right? So, like, for example, tayammum. So tayammum, there are many ways, there are many reasons why a person could perform tayammum, right? But in the Singapore context, right, while I do teach tayammum when there is no water, right, I will mention it, right? And then I won't go into so many examples or details, as to, like there's about no water. There is a part whereby, you have to search how many miles this way, if you're in flat land. If you're in a built-up area, where must you search for the water? And there's a lot of details as to there not being any water, right? But it's something that is not common in Singapore, whereby you actually find yourself with no water. Usually there's water, right, somewhere. You can find, even if you can't find it in your house, you can go to a masjid and there's water in the masjid. So basically, the part of tayammum whereby it speaks about faqdul ma', right, there is no water, I don't go deep into, because it's not something that is in our space, right, in our place, right? But the part about tayammum when it comes to wounds, bandages, hospital, right, this one I went deep into, right, when I was teaching the fiqh of that, right, because this happens to people all the time. Like you have bandage on your arm, your feet and whatsoever. You don't know what to do with yourself. Your wudu, your tayammum and whatsoever. You're in the hospital, right? You have a drip on you. You don't know what to do, right? So basically, I went deep into the fiqh of tayammum when it comes to bandages. Right? That one, it really applies to us. Right? So similarly, when we speak about the prayer of fear, so the prayer of fear, I went through very quickly. Because it would be, but the most of the prayers of fear I went through very quickly, because most likely, right, you will not find yourself in a war, right, in the battlefield whereby you have to pray, right? Most likely you won't find that, right? But I went into the prayer of fear when you fear calamity striking, right? For example, when there's a tsunami, it might happen. Right, for example, when you're being pursued, right, by someone, maybe for example, you could be a robber or some sort of maniac. Or if you go overseas, for example, right, then you must know how you're going to pray the prayer of fear if you find yourself in a situation, right, in a way, right. So basically, and it comes to traveling also, right. I went a lot into the fiqh of travel, right, because Singaporeans, we travel a lot, right. So basically, with the map, I should know Singapore map. Go up to Johor, up to where, right? The airport. Where is the airport? Right? Is there a built-up area around the airport? Right? So the fiqh of travel, because it really applies to our people, right? You need to learn the fiqh of travel. So when you learn like basic fiqh texts, they might not have the fiqh of travel very in a lot of detail, right? So no matter what book I'm using, right, even if it doesn't say anything about the fiqh of travel, I would always put it in. I will always put it in as an extra thing, right? Even if I was teaching once at Wafa, right, we're doing Rasul Jami'ah, and there's no fiqh of travel in there because it's a very basic text. And people of last time, they rarely actually travel. Right? Only some people who have tijara, they have trade, they actually travel. Right? But for us, almost everybody travels. Right? So we need to know the fiqh of travel. Right? What can we do? What can we not do? Right? On the fiqh of plane also, I went to in a lot of detail. Right? How do you tell the qibla? Should you tell what do you have to? Do you know the entire thing about the screen on the plane and everything, and how to tell the timing when you're on the plane. Have I at the Zohor, Asar? What timing do I look at? And my watch, do I look at the time on the ground? Right? Do I look at the sky? How do I know? Right? Which timing am I in? Especially subuh. Right? When it's very fast, if you're flying towards the sun, the movement of the sun, then subuh will go past you very quickly. Right? It's not going to be an hour. It's going to be like a few minutes and it's done. Subuh. Right? So you're on the plane and you need to be aware. Right? And has dawn risen or not? Right? So all of these things, right? When it comes to it, right, because the students need it, right, I will go into it. Right, what students do not need, right, but it's in the book, right, we'll just go quickly through. Right, if they do find themselves in a situation, then they will seek they will consult us, someone who knows. So that he says here, right, so you shouldn't be going into things that does not the masses do not need. You must know your people. Right, and of all knowledges you should focus on is the knowledge of the hereafter, the akhirah. That you fill their hearts with desire for paradise and fear for hellfire. Right, as the Quran does, is the most important thing. That you fill their hearts, right, with taqwa for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, and love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, and to avoid anything that you think, right, would cause them doubts, or would cause them confusion. Right, in these knowledges. Imam Abu Amr bin Salah said, I think that the reason why Mu'adh radiallahu ta'ala anhu related this hadith at the time of his death, despite Rasulullah prohibiting him from doing so, can be explained as follows. Rasulullah had prohibited him from giving glad tidings to people out of fear that those who have no knowledge and experience will become proud of their shahada and lax. That's why Rasul gave him that commandment: do not share with the people, right? Because they're going to get proud that they're Muslim and therefore they have the straight ticket into paradise, right? And they become lax. And actually, in fact, while it is true that all believers do enter paradise, right, but nobody can say that they'll die as a believer. Right? So the statement is true: all believers enter paradise. It's true. It's a true statement. But the statement that are you going to die as a believer, we don't know. Right? So there's no point being proud. Because you don't know the end of your life, na'uzubillah, if someone might not be on the path. Right? So Muslims who go around, arrogant, saying that, we're all in paradise and all these believers are in the hellfire. You don't know who's going to die how. Right? And those people might die as believers and you might not, na'uzubillah. Right? So which is why you don't actually become lax. Right? Because the more you sin, right, the more you become hardened. Right? The more hard you are, right, the easier it is for shaitan to make you leave your religion. Right, so it's already a false. It's already such a false perception that Muslims carry. That it is true, all Muslims enter, all believers enter paradise. But who says you are the believer? No one ever promised you that you're going to be believer, right? But that's why they have that. That it's a false, pride, right? It is true, but no one says it's going to be you. Right, so inshallah, may Allah make us of those people, inshallah. Right, so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam conveyed this glad tidings specifically to those who had thorough knowledge and whom he felt would be safe from being proud and lax, like Sayyidina Mu'adh bin Jabal. He thus informed Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, right, the latter also followed this way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the sense that he too only informed certain people whom he felt were worthy of it, fearing the sin of concealing knowledge from them, and Allah knows best. Right, so Sayyidina Mu'adh, right, in him relating what Rasulullah has told him. Right, so you see, he didn't disobey Rasulullah. If you're wondering, the hadith doesn't go that he disobeyed Rasulullah. Right, Rasulullah told him the hadith, right, and then he asked Rasulullah, should I tell the people? Right, and he said no, right, because some of them might become lax or they might misunderstand this. So Sayyidina Mu'az, he didn't go out there and tell the people, right, in general, right, but he told some of his students this hadith whom he knows that the students would understand. Like how Rasul told him, he told certain students only. So he didn't actually go out there and announce it. He told certain students only, knowing that these certain students would tell certain students only, and pass down the knowledge. When they feel that these students will not misunderstand the hadith. So it's not meant to be a hadith that is written and then spread out there without a commentary. It's because Rasul knows that Mu'az will include a commentary on the hadith. And then his students, following his footsteps, will relate and also include a commentary on the hadith. And this hadith has reached us today through Shaykh Abu Fadl Abu Ghudda, together with a commentary. So he himself then read the hadith without commentary, because there needs to be a commentary of this hadith. And most of the ulama, when they write down hadith, they will always put in commentary in the hadith, so nobody will misunderstand the hadith. And if they fear that someone might misunderstand the hadith, they will not relate it in the first place. They will keep the knowledge. Okay, hadith number 32. Right, alhamdulillah, I hope that the hadith was clear about Sayyidina Mu'az. It's a very beautiful hadith, mashallah. So hadith number 32. Right. روى الإمام أحمد في مسنده عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص قال كنا عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فجاء شاب فقال يا رسول الله أقبل وأنا صائم قال لا فجاء شيخ فقال أقبل وأنا صائم قال نعم فنظر بعضنا إلى بعض فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قد علمت لما نظر بعضكم إلى بعض إن الشيخ يملك نفسه. Right. So this is another hadith, right, where Rasulullah gave different answers to the same question. Right, two men came to him with the same question, and he gave each of them a different answer. Right, and this again is specialized teaching, right, to the individual. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala narrates on the authority of Abdullah bin Amr radiallahu ta'ala bin al-As radiallahu ta'ala who said, we were with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam when a young man came to him and he asked, Ya Rasulullah, can I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? Can I kiss while I'm fasting? And the Rasulullah said, no. And thereafter an old man came and asked, can I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? And the Rasulullah said, yes. Right? And the narrator of the hadith says, we began looking at each other, in surprise, because the answer was different for the same question. And the Rasulullah said, I know why you are looking at each other. I know you're thinking, how come I answered differently for the same question? And he said, the old man can control himself. Meaning the young man is going to put him in a position whereby he might break his fast by getting closer to his wife, right? by performing intercourse with the wife. Whereas the older man, right, will be able to hold himself and just kiss and go away, right? So again, the answer is with respect to the questioner. Is he able to handle it or not? Right. So it's easier. Since the old man could control himself, there was no fear that he would nullify his fast by engaging in intercourse. As for the young man, kissing would lead him to intercourse or ejaculation, which would have nullified his fast. So for the young man, Rasulullah said to stay away from your wife if you are able to. And Rasulullah replies thus differed because of the questioner's different circumstances. And I know that my teacher would tell me that in Hadramaut, right, some of them, right, being so particular, right, while they're fasting, they won't even have an afternoon nap on the same bed with their wife. They won't. They will sleep on the floor or sleep in the hall. So if they're all at home, both at home, all working. Right? But if let's say they're both at home, and having an afternoon nap, right, while they're fasting in the day, right, they won't actually they won't actually share the same bed. The husband will be on the floor, right, or in the hall, and the wife will be on the bed. Right, so this is how much they, in Hadramaut, they will really guard, right, over not having any form of interactions while they are fasting. Right, they're very particular about all of these things. They're all like not so particular, fasting. And the next hadith, right, it says here, رواه البخاري ومسلم عن عبد الله بن عمرو قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يستأذنه في الجهاد فقال أحي والداك قال نعم قال ففيهما فجاهد Right, so again, another hadith about a man came to Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim narrate on the authority of Abdullah bin Amr radiallahu anhu, who said, a person came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asking for permission to go to jihad or to participate in jihad. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, are your parents alive? And he said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. And he said, then go to them and do your jihad with them, with your parents. Right, so here you see that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, he knew that this man had old parents. He knew. He was quite aware that he had old parents. Whereas for other Sahaba, he would actually push them and urge them to go for jihad. And in fact, jihad is compulsory on them. But he saw for this man in particular, his parents would actually struggle without him being around. His parents would be, it would be difficult on his parents in his absence. So Rasulullah SAW made it specific for this man in particular, to go and struggle with your parents. It means go and serve your parents. And that will be your jihad. Not to go out in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is a specific law for this man. And from there, we can actually derive the law that if someone is in need of you, then it's not becoming of you to actually go out there and fight in the way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So and it goes to any situation. If there's someone who is in need of you, then you need to be able to and there's nobody else to look after this person, then you need to be able to know how to juggle. And you know how to when to go out of the house and when to stay in the house. If there are people who are in need of you, for example, older parents or young children, there's nobody else who can look after, then it's on the parents to actually think how they can actually arrange this such that they don't neglect those who are under them. Right? If there's no one to look after them, no one to look after the children or their parents. Right? So in other words, if you have parents, you should focus all your endeavors towards being kind and good to them. For you, this will be the jihad. It will be equivalent to jihad and waging war against an enemy. It will be equal to the person. Alright. The next hadith, روى مسلم عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنه قال أقبل رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال أبايعك على الهجرة والجهاد أبتغي الأجر من الله. قال فهل من والديك أحد حي؟ قال نعم بل كلاهما. قال فتبتغي الأجر من الله؟ قال نعم. قال فارجع إلى والديك فأحسن صحبتكما. Right, so a similar hadith he narrates, whereby Imam Muslim radiallahu anhu he narrates on the authority of Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who said, a person came to Rasulullah and said, I give you my pledge of allegiance for immigration and jihad. It means I pledge to you I will migrate to Medina, hijrah, and perform jihad. And I seek reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Rasulullah said to him, similarly with the man from before, are any of your parents alive? And he said, yes, in fact both are alive. And Rasulullah said, then, and you are still seeking reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he said, yes. And Rasulullah said, go back to your parents and treat them kindly and be good to them. And so here you see, one thing about this hadith is that something as great as jihad, is something as great as jihad, right? Fulfilling your obligations, your responsibility is greater. And Habib Omar, when we were in studying in Tarim, he will say to us many times, if any of you are here against the rida of your parents, then go home. Right? Don't stay here. Right? So even seeking knowledge overseas, right? Don't stay here if your parents are not pleased with you. Go home. If they want you with them, go home. Right? Don't stay in Tarim. Right? So on top of that, everything else lah. That if those who are depending on you, if they are dependent, if there's somebody else who can look after them, then there's somebody else who can look after them. Right? But if there's nobody that can look after them, then it's on you to actually be of their service. That Sayyidina always been, Sayyidina always al-Qarni, right, whereby he dedicated his life to serving his mother, and from there he got the station wherever he got. But there was nobody else to serve his mother besides him. Right? So it's really on the condition that there's nobody else. If there is somebody else, then it's fine. Somebody else can actually go and handle whatever they need and your parents' needs. So this was Rasulullah's reply to him, although he was known to encourage others to participate in jihad and to emigrate. However, considering the condition of the person who asked the question, he felt that treating his parent kindly was more important and virtuous for him. Right? Because many people can go for jihad, but not anybody can look after your parents. Similarly, like when it comes to children, a lot of almost every teacher that I've spoken to will say that many people can do da'wah. Many people can go and da'wah. Right? But if you have children, you stay with your children, because not everybody will look after your child, right? The way you want to look after your child. Right? So when it comes to da'wah, even then, right, not to neglect your child and go out there and call the people to Islam. Because the first people who you have responsibility towards will be your own children. And so you don't go out there, and spend your life, with everybody else, and then you put your child under some helper or whatsoever, and then you don't look after your child yourself. Right? That is basically my teachers will always be very, very firm on this, right? That from all these hadiths as proof, right? That if there's a duty that only you can fulfill, then you fulfill. Right, but if somebody else can fulfill it, then let somebody else fulfill it if you want to do something else. But again, you need to weigh. You need to weigh what is more important. Right, so when it comes to jihad, many people can perform jihad. When it comes to da'wah, many people can perform da'wah. Many people out there. And there are plenty of people who are basically not married, people who have no children, people who are men. Right, plenty of people out there can actually perform, all of these duties. Right, this was. So the difference in Rasulullah's replies on account of different conditions, circumstances and abilities of those who questioned him is a vast chapter with numerous examples as mentioned in the books of the pure Sunnah. Right? This particular trait of Rasulullah when it comes to answering questions and teaching, right, is something that is very well established, very highly established. Right? And there are many hadiths on this situation. Included in this are the various words of advice which he gave to those who asked for it. He would customize his advice to each person who asked for it in accordance with the differences in their circumstances. Right? So many of the Sahaba actually came up to Rasulullah saying, advise me. And each time a Sahabi would come up and ask him, advise me, his answer would be different. Right? Depending on the one who came up to him and asked for advice. Right? So what they needed, he would say. And he was able to see, what this person actually needed. So here he's going to mention a few more hadiths, a few hadiths whereby different people will come up to Rasulullah asking for advice. And we will see how he actually will tailor his advice according to what the people need. Right? There's a few hadiths he mentioned, but I think about 6 or 7 hadiths he mentions here about different Sahaba asking for advice. And each time the answer is different. So the first hadith he says here, روى الإمام أحمد واللفظ له والترمذي عن أبي ذر رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قلت يا رسول الله أوصيني قال اتق الله حيثما كنت وأتبع سيئة حسنة تمحوها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. So Imam Ahmad and Tirmidhi narrate on the authority of Abu Dhar رضي الله عنه, who said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Ya Rasulullah, advise me. And so it's Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, advise me. He replied, I advise you to fear Allah wherever you may be and follow an evil deed with a good deed. So the latter wipes out the effect of the former and deal with people in a noble manner. So the first I'm not going to go deep into the hadith meanings because it's not a hadith class, but it's a class that is meant to focus on different methods of teaching. Right, when I teach this hadith, I will go deep into the hadith. Right, but for the class, I will not go into the hadith. Right, so much except then to take the method that is being shown here. Right, so the method that's being shown here is that a man came, Abu Dhar came to Rasulullah and said, advise me. And he gave him the advice of taqwa. Have taqwa, follow up an evil with a good deed, right, and it will wipe up its effects, and deal with people in a noble manner. Right, another hadith, right, that is from Imam Bukhari and Imam Tirmidhi, وَاللَّفْزُ مِنْهُمَا, right, and it is from Imam Bukhari and Imam Tirmidhi, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رجلا قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أوصيني بشيء ولا تكثر علي لعلي أعيه قال لا تغضب فردد ذلك مرارا كل ذلك يقول لا تغضب. And Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim narrate from Abu Hurairah who said that a person came to Rasulullah and say, advise me with something, right? But don't say too much. I just want one short advice so that I'm able to understand and remember what you say. Give me a short advice. And Rasulullah said, do not get angry. There's a famous hadith, don't get angry. And this was specific to this man. It was specific to this man, but of course it is to be spread to those who are not able to control their anger. Right? So for some people, they have taqwa of Allah and follow out what is evil with what is good. Right? And it will remove it and have good character. For some people, the advice for them is don't get angry. And you're always getting angry, you're always losing your temper. Right? So don't get angry means do not present yourself in situations and involve yourself in matters that will cause you to become angry. This is because anger is part of human nature and can never be removed from man's temperament. It also means that you should not do or say what your anger dictates or propels you to do. And so don't get angry doesn't mean that you don't actually get angry at all, but it's that when you get angry, you control yourself. That's what it means. Right? And the third hadith, you see, so I'm going through the hadith quickly because I want to get the entire meaning of it all. Now you see that different people have different advice from Rasulullah. روى البخاري ومسلم واللفظ له عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن أعرابيا جاء إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته دخلت الجنة قال تعبد الله لا تشركوا به شيئا وتقيم الصلاة المكتوبة وتؤدي الزكاة المفروضة وتصوم رمضان قال والذي نفسي بيده لا أزيد على هذا شيئا أبدا ولا أنقص منه فلما ولى قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من سره أن ينظر إلى رجل من أهل الجنة فلينظر إلى هذا. So this is one of those hadiths whereby, subhanAllah, it shows the ease of Islam on those who are able to not do more than what is wajib. So this hadith from Sayyidina Abu Hurairah who said that a Bedouin came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, show me a deed which if I carry out, I will enter paradise. So Rasulullah could see this man, his only concern is to be able to enter paradise. He wants to just enter paradise, the minimum passing mark. What do I have to do to get myself into paradise? Rasulullah said, worship Allah and do not ascribe anything to Him in partnership. Establish the prayer, give the zakat, and fast the month of Ramadan. He left out Hajj. You're going to see it on in the explanation why he left out Hajj. Right? It could be that this came before the law of Hajj, or it could be that he could see the Bedouin or someone poor. Right, so when there's someone poor, then they would leave out Hajj because they don't have enough money to ever go anywhere, and they stay where they are. Right, but most likely is before the law of Hajj came down. Right, so sometimes you will see in the hadith that he will leave out certain laws, right, because the law has not come down yet. Right, so at that point in time where the hadith was actually mentioned. Right, so he says here, and the man replied, I take an oath by him in whose hand is my life, that I will never do anything neither more than this nor anything less. Right, so he swears, this is all I'm ever going to do. I'm going to pray. I'm going to say that Allah is one God and not ascribe partners to Him. I will pray. I'll give zakat and I'll fast. And I don't do anything more than that. That's all. I'm just going to keep to this, right, and not do anything else. And when the person went away, Rasulullah said, if anyone would like to see someone from paradise, then he should look at this person. Right, so just by the minimum, he enters into paradise because of what he said. I'm not going to decrease on this. I will do exactly as you say, Rasulullah. Right, and here, right, Rasulullah gave this man specifically this, and other Sahaba, Rasulullah actually expected more of them. Right, he actually informed them of the Sunnah prayers, the Sunnah fasts. Right, he informed them of charity, and he pushed them on it. Right, we know in the story of Sayyidina Fatimah Zahra. She's not allowed to have any form of wealth at all, and that is the level of his daughter. His daughter is not allowed to have any dunya whatsoever. Other people, they can have the dunya if they want to. And there are some Sahaba who will come, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he will come to Rasulullah and he will give all his wealth in charity, and Rasulullah will actually accept it. And there are companions who will come and try to give all their wealth, and Rasulullah will actually return them some of their wealth, saying that your family needs it. Right, so because he knows that the family of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, they have the strength to bear no wealth, right? No wealth at all given, no wealth at all in their hands. Whereas some people, some of the Sahaba, or some knows that their families are not able to bear it. And some of them, their families, need to have some wealth in hand. So he, by his mercy, he will give back, so as not to test the family. Right? There was another Sahaba who on the brink of his death. Right? He thought he was going to die because of during a war. Right? And Rasulullah went to see him. Right? And he was very, very sick. Right? And he asked Rasulullah, should I have a daughter? And there's the only person who would inherit from me. So can I give out my wealth in charity before I die? Because I see myself about to die, so I want to just give out all of my wealth. And Rasulullah said to him, it is better that you leave your daughter wealthy than you leave her as a beggar, asking of people because you give out all the wealth. Right? Then he says, can I give up, can I at least give out, about 2/3 of my wealth? And Rasulullah said, no, that is too much. And he said, can I give out about half? And he said, no, that is too much. And he said, can I give out about 1/3? And Rasulullah said, 1/3, okay, but 1/3 is a lot, right, to give, because your daughter will need the wealth. Right? So, and there were other Sahaba whom Rasulullah actually allowed them to give out all of their wealth, right, depending on which Sahaba he's talking to. Right? So the answer is different, right, because of the student. So this statement, like, if anyone would like to see someone from the people of paradise, he should look at this person, is sometimes made by people when praising certain individuals. However, we should abstain from making such statements because it means that we are saying with certainty that so and so is in paradise. Only Rasulullah is able to say that. So you can't say, oh, that person is Ahlul Jannah. You can't say that. No one can say that. Even there was once during after a battle, right? And they were burying the martyrs of the battle, right? And some of the Sahaba, they saw one man and they said, MashaAllah, he's a martyr, right? And Rasulullah turned to them, with displeasure, and he said that, are you the ones who write who is in paradise, who is not in paradise? How do you know, right, that he died in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And there was another hadith about another man, also same thing. The Sahaba said, MashaAllah, he's a martyr. And Rasulullah said to them, I see him right now in the fire, right, because he has taken of the wealth of the war without permission, what is not his. He stole from the booty of the war, right? So you all think that he's a martyr. He's not a martyr. He's in the fire. Right? So Rasulullah, he would prevent people from saying who is in paradise and who is in the hellfire. Only he is allowed to say so because he has knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So he's saying that some people will say it because they of their respect for some individuals, but it's best to refrain from saying so and so is in paradise, so and so is in paradise. You don't know. You don't know who is in paradise and who is not in paradise. And even worse to say so and so is in the hellfire. Right? It's not. So you're not somebody on some sort of pedestrian in paradise saying who's in hellfire. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who will actually decide who is in hellfire and who is not. Right? So you can't actually say that all those people who are at the clubs right now, they're all in hellfire. You don't know they're going to taubat, they're going to change their lives, they're going to go. You can't say like that. Right? So and the ulama, they really get very upset when people begin to label people of the fire and of paradise. Right. So Shaykh Abu Fatah Abu Ghudda felt it important, right, to bring this to the attention of the reader, because there are people nowadays who are doing this, who will say to other people, that these people are in paradise. Right. The next hadith, Rawat Tirmidhi wa lafzu lahu wa ibn Majah an Abdullah bin Busrin anna rajulan qala ya Rasulullah inna shara'i'a al-islami qad kathurat alayya فأخبرني بشيء أتشبث به قال لا يزال لسانك رطبا من ذكر الله. Right, so another hadith, right, about someone asking for advice. Right, so this man, this hadith in this case, right, from Imam Tirmidhi, Imam Ibn Majah, right, who narrate that from Abdullah bin Busr radiallahu anhu, who said the man came to Rasulullah and said, right, the laws of Islam are too many for me. It's too much for me. It's too heavy. So inform me of something which I can hold on to. And Rasulullah said, your tongue should always remain moist to remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here Rasulullah saw that in this man, right, because he's showing a weakness here. He's finding the laws being very difficult. So Rasulullah is teaching him taqwa. And so when you have taqwa, at least you will not fall into sin. And so if the laws are too difficult, at least what is haram, you run away from. And so if you can't do what is sunnah, you can't do all the extra stuff, at least the haram you don't go to. And how to stop the man from going towards haram? If Rasulullah said, have taqwa of Allah, this man might not understand what it meant, what it means. Like for Sayyidina Abu Dhar, Rasulullah said, have taqwa of Allah. It's the same thing. I have taqwa of Allah or be in constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's the same thing. But for Sayyidina Abu Dhar, he knows what taqwa means. And he knows how to get taqwa. But maybe for this man, like he was not somebody who was aware of how do I have taqwa. So Rasulullah gave him a physical advice and that he can hold on to continuously be in zikr. And he mentions zikr with the tongue. That means for him to be continuously in verbal zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not even in your heart or in your mind, but verbally be in zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because he could see that this man, in doing so, it would stop him from committing sins. Because he's always mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas for Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, taught him good character and taught him to follow up an evil deed with a good deed. Because Abu Dhar was one Sahaba who was known to be very strict, very strict, very firm when it came to the laws of Islam. So he might, upset people in his firmness and his strictness. He might upset people in the way he's very blunt towards people. So Rasulullah give him a specific advice following his character. This is what it is. So alhamdulillah, all of these hadiths show the different ways by which Rasulullah will answer the same type of question. Another hadith, Rawah Muslim wa Tirmidhi wa Ibn Majah عن سفيان بن عبد الله الثقفي قال قلت يا رسول الله قل لي في الإسلام قولا لا أسأل أحدا بعدك قال قل آمنت بالله فاستقم. هذا لفظ مسلم. ولفظ الترمذي وابن ماجه قلت يا رسول الله حدثني بأمر أعتصم به قال قل ربي الله ثم استقم. قلت يا رسول الله ما أكثر ما تخاف عليه فأخذ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بلسان نفسه ثم قال هذا. So this is on this specific Sahaba. So he says here, Sayyidina Sufyan bin Abdullah al-Thaqafi came to Rasulullah and said, teach me something about Islam that I cannot ask anybody after you. And he said, say, I believe in Allah, then remain steadfast. Have istiqamah. And this hadith speaks specifically about istiqamah. Because probably Rasulullah knows that this particular Sahaba, he might have issues with istiqamah. In being steadfast on whatever he says. And another narration similarly, whereby he says that, he say, I believe in Allah and remain steadfast. And then, he said, Ya Rasulullah, what do you fear the most for me? So specific to the Sahaba again, what do you fear the most for me? And he held his tongue and he said this, your tongue. Because the tongue is the thing that will bring most people into the hellfire. And Rasul knows that the Sahaba, the specific Sahabi, he will have issues with his tongue. So when he gives the advice directly to the Sahabi, hold on to your tongue. It means hold yourself from speaking too much or from saying what you might regret. So it's something that Rasulullah is giving specific to the Sahaba, your tongue. Some people, they have no issues with their tongue. So when I teach people about the evils of tongue, and I look around me and I see these people that are okay with tongue. They're very soft spoken and they're very nice, and I don't think they actually go around scolding people with harsh words or as when I teach about the tongue and the disease of the tongue, you feel like all the students here are all so okay with their tongue. So I don't even have to tell them to control their tongue. But for some people, they have issues with their tongue. So for me personally, for me, this hadith is very applicable. Control your tongue. Don't say what you will regret on the day of judgment. So it was specific, given to this specific Sahaba. So you do see several different hadiths with more or less the same question. He is asking for advice, and each of them have a different answer from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Qadi Iyad rahimahullah said, this is in accordance with the verse, those who said our Lord is Allah and then remain steadfast. In other words, they affirm the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believe in Him, and then remain steadfast while deviating from the path of Tawheed, and adhered strictly to the obedience until death, to His obedience until death. So you see this quoted by Imam Nawawi in Sharah Sahih Muslim. You see that many of the ulama of the past, they do sit down and write down Sharah. That's why we will always go back to the explanation of hadith. and not to the hadith text itself. Because the hadith text itself will actually cause you to misunderstand the hadith, whereas the explanation would allow you to understand the hadith, right, clearly. Okay. Alright, I'm trying to finish this section actually. Alhamdulillah. Okay, a bit more. Alhamdulillah. Alright, hadith number 40, روى الترمذي عن عقبة بن عامر رضي الله عنه قال قلت يا رسول الله من نجاه قال أملك عليك لسانك وليسعك بيتك وابكي على خطيئتك. And so again, this another Sahaba, Sayyidina Uqba bin Amr who said to Rasulullah, what is salvation? What will save me? He said, control your tongue. Let your house be sufficient. It means let your house be enough for you, and cry over your mistakes. Right? 3 things that will bring your salvation, that bring your that will save you in the next world. So control your tongue, because by the tongue a person is destroyed, and we know this, right? It is well known, even in the Malay language, that because of the mouth, the body is destroyed. Right? So control your tongue. Right? Let your house be sufficient. Right? Meaning that let your house be enough for you. Don't seek to have more, right, than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Right? And cry over your mistakes, meaning repent and regret, and this will give you salvation. There are other hadiths in which different words of advice and admonition of Rasulullah are related in view of the conditions, circumstances, and the needs of those who posed the question. Included in this category are the various replies of Rasulullah to the question about the most virtuous or beloved of deeds in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah give a reply which he considered the most pertinent and in the best interest of the questioner at the time of asking. So now he's going to go into a set of hadith. So he's finished the hadith about whenever somebody will come to Rasulullah and ask for advice, or for us for what will help me in the next world. And now he's going to a set of hadith whereby the questioner will ask, what is the best deed in Islam? Or what is the most beloved deed in Islam? And if you've read enough hadith, you will notice that there are many different hadiths that speak about this. And each time the answer is different. So again, it's really based on the questioner, right? What he is asking, how his state is, and what Rasulullah knows about his state. Right? This I'm going to read a bit fast because it's the same points, right? But just the hadiths are just, mashallah, very rich hadith. روى البخاري ومسلم واللفظ له عن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنه رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن رجلا سأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الإسلام خير؟ قال تطعم الطعام وتقرأ السلام على من عرفت ومن لم تعرف. Right, Bukhari and Muslim narrate the authority of Abdullah bin Amr anhu that the person asked Rasulullah what characteristic of Islam is the best. It means what is the best thing a believer can do. And Rasulullah said to feed the people, to give salams to those whom you know and those who you do not know. Right, so it could be that the questioner that came, he was known that he doesn't like to have guests. Right, so Rasulullah would actually answer in respect to what he was. Right, and also maybe he was somebody who didn't actually go around giving salams. Right, so he will answer in respect to what the questioner actually needs. The next hadith, right, similar question. روى مسلم عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنه تعالى عنهما أن رجل سأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال أي المسلمين خير. It's a different question. The first one was أي الإسلام خير. In this question, أي المسلمين خير, but the same meaning. فقال من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. The one who is safe, his tongue and his hands from the Muslims. So the one who questions probably was someone who did not hold back in his harm against other believers in his tongue and in his hands. So Rasulullah specifically mentioned this advice to him. The best of Islam is the one whom other people are safe from. The best Muslim is the one whom other people are safe from his hands and his tongue. The first person, the first Sahaba, the best of Islam or the best in a believer is that he gives salams and he feeds the people. He feeds those who are poor. So 2 different answers to the same question. Hadith 43. روى البخاري ومسلم واللفظ للبخاري عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال سئل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الأعمال سئل مجهول سئل النبي صلى الله. So Abu Hurairah even said جاء رجل, the rest of them say أن رجلا سأل أن رجلا سأل, then go سئل. Right, he didn't even say that someone, and you notice that for all of them, they didn't say who it was, unless it was them who asked the question. They say Sa'altu Nabi. I didn't say that so and so, asked Rasulullah. They know who these people are. They probably know, right? But they always say Rajul, Rajul, Rajul. In case that it is interpreted that this person who asked the question, he has issues with salams, or he has issues with his neighbors, or he has issues with his tongue, in his hand. So instead of even saying the name of the Sahaba, because they fear any form of backbiting. So they want to narrate the hadith, but they don't want to expose the person. Right? So they narrate the hadith by saying that it was us, or a man came, whoever he was, right? A man came and asked the question. So a lot of hadith of this nature, they will not actually mention the name of the Sahaba that came and asked the question. Right? So Su'ila Nabiyyu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And if you look at Nahu, Nabiyyu, right? Su'ila Nabiyyu, and it's got Naib Fa'il. Right? He is not the doer of the question, he's the doer of being asked. Right? Su'ila Nabiyyu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ayyul a'mali afdal, which deed is the best? قال إيمان بالله ورسوله. قيل ثم ماذا؟ قال جهاد في سبيل الله. قال ثم ماذا؟ قال حج مبرور. So this hadith, right? Somebody came, someone was asked, which deed is the most virtuous? He replied, believe in Allah and his messenger. He was asked, then what? Then he replied, jihad. And he was asked, then what? And he replied and accepted Hajj. Right? So it was specifically for this person who asked him, right? It could be this person, maybe he's just coming into Islam, Allahu Alam, right? Or it could be that this person was a rich person. Right, so it could be that this person was not going for jihad enough, or not doing his Hajj yet. Right, so the first answer is basically more of like a default answer. Right, the best of these is Iman, because without Iman you can't do jihad, nor can you do Hajj. You need to have your Shahada first before you actually do the other two. Right, so he always answers first with the thing about believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then jihad, because probably this man who came to ask the question, like with regards to the previous hadith, whereby the man came and said, I want to perform jihad. And he asked the man, do you have parents? If you have parents, then go back to your parents and serve them. That is better for you. For this man, he didn't say that. He didn't say, birrul walidain. Because probably he knows the man has no parents. Right? Or maybe his parents are taken care of by somebody else. Right? So he said to the man, for you specifically, what is good? It is jihad. Right? And thereafter, and if you're able to go for Hajj, then go for Hajj and get it to be accepted. Right, accepted Hajj. So it could be that the man was someone of wealth, right, and animals, right, because to go for jihad you need to go and ride out there into faraway lands to perform jihad. وروى البخاري ومسلم واللفظ له عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال سألت. So now he's saying I asked Rasulullah سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم Ayyul amali afdal. So now you have Ibn Mas'ud. Like, what is his question? Which deed is the best? وفي رواية Ayyul amali ahabbu ila Allah. And in another narration, which deed is the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Rasulullah answered him differently from the previous Sahaba. His answer was as-salatu li waqtiha, like to pray on time. Qultu summa ay, and then what? Qal birrul walidain. So Ibn Mas'ud, he said birrul walidain. قال قلت ثم أي قال الجهاد في سبيل الله فما تركت أستزيده إلا إرعاء عليه. Right, so Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud came and asked the question, and for him the first one that was said to him was prayer at this time. A different answer. And then he gave birrul walidain, and then he gave jihad. So you see his answer with respect to the previous hadith different, because it could be the previous man had no parents, and maybe he had no issue praying at the mosque on time. Allahu alam, right? And Ibn Mas'ud said that I only stopped asking him because I was I felt I was bothering him. I kept asking him questions, and then what. So I stopped asking him after number 3. Right. In other words, I did not ask Rasulullah about other deeds in order and the order of virtue of kindness to him. From this, we learn that a student should be kind to his teacher, and he should take his circumstances into account and be compassionate towards him. So not to ask so many questions, to hold teacher back for hours, asking all kinds of things. If you can figure it out, then figure it out. Right? If not, then be satisfied with whatever the teacher gives, and whatever she's not able to give, then don't give. Then don't ask about it. Right? To have compassion on the teacher. So even the Sahaba had compassion on their teacher Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even then, they will have the respect and the adab, and not to push him. Right? But to see, is enough. Jihad, parents, and praying on time is enough for us to work on. We'll stay with this, for now. Right. The next hadith, Rawa Abu Ya'la an rajulin min khas'am. قال أتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو في نفر من أصحابه فقلت أنت الذي تزعم أنك رسول الله؟ قال نعم. قال قلت يا رسول الله أي الأعمال أحب إلى الله؟ قال إيمان بالله. قال قلت يا رسول الله ثم ما؟ قال ثم صلة الرحم. قال قلت يا رسول الله ثم ما؟ قال ثم الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر. قال قلت يا رسول الله أي الأعمال أبغض إلى الله؟ قال الإشراك بالله. قال قلت يا رسول الله ثم ما؟ قال ثم قطيعة الرحم. قال قلت يا رسول الله ثم ما؟ قال ثم الأمر بالمنكر وَالنَّهْيُ عَنِ الْمَعْرُوفِ. And he gave the opposite, right, in the hadith. So Abu Ya'la narrates of a person somebody from a tribe of Khata'am. I came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, I came to Rasulullah while he was with Sahaba, and I said to him, are you the one who says that he is a prophet? Do you claim yaz'am? Anta alladhi yaz'um annaka Rasulullah, right? Are you the one who actually claims that you are a prophet? Yaz'um. Right? Do you claim that? And Rasulullah said yes. And from here we take the lesson that Rasulullah did not feel offended in any way. Because someone came up to you and said, do you claim to be a prophet? Right? And he asked the question, yeah, it's me. I'm the one who claims to be a prophet. Right? So the men, basically these people, they're Bedouins. So when they ask questions, right, they just ask up front. And they just want to know. That's all. They just want to know. They're not trying to, question you or, be rude. In a way, when you read the hadith, it sounds very rude. When he comes and says, are you the one who claims to be a prophet? Is it you? Right? You don't even be defensive. You just say, yeah, it's me. What do you want? Right? And then you ask this question, which is the most beloved deed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we see the Sahaba, many of them actually ask this question. And what is most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because they want to be beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? They want to do as they should do to them. There's so many deeds out there to do. So what should I do? Right? How do I prioritize, my deeds? What should I focus on? That's why they came to Rasulullah and they asked the question. So a few of them were doing it because they were there's too many things to do. With our time that is of goodness. So can you advise us what is the best thing to do? Right? And he says here the best is to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And then he says, then what? Because for them, okay, I done that. I done the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala part. And usually Rasulullah would always begin with this because it is the best thing of everything. Even if the questioner already believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what? This is maintaining family ties. This is the first time we're seeing this in this kind of hadith. Right? So for this specific person, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, his answer is Silatul Rahim. Because it could be that this tribe has issues with Silatul Rahim. So sometimes it's not just because of the person, it could be because of his tribe. His tribe might be known for them breaking off the Silatul Rahim. And then he says, when what? Then he says, commanding to what is good and forbidding what is evil. So it could be that his tribe, right, is basically having issues. And Rasulullah told him, right, that the best thing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to command what is good and to forbid what is evil. Then when he asked the flip side, what does Allah hate the most? There are some answers him with the opposite of all of them. Right? Ascribing partners to Allah, severing family ties, and commanding evil and forbidding good. Right? So it could be that his tribe I had all of these issues where Rasulullah answered him in this way. Right, there are various other ahadith of this nature wherein different replies were given to questions concerning the most virtuous and the most beloved of deeds. The differences in these replies are based on differences among the individuals in the groups or the occasions when the questions were posed. Rasulullah informed each questioner according to his need and aspects of Islam he had not yet perfected. So he focused, what this person actually needs, what he has not perfected and what he actually needs to build up on. Or which had not yet reached him. So sometimes he will give them something that is new in the Sharia. So he will inform them of that. That which he had an inclination towards, or that will be appropriate for him. So he sees a Sahaba who will be able to do a particular act, so he will give him that advice. Do this act. As we mentioned before about Sayyidina Ibn Umar, where some say, what kind of how good a man Ibn Umar, ni'ma rajul, how good a man Ibn Umar if only he prayed at night. And that was specific for Sayyidina Ibn Umar, because he had the ability to wake up and pray. So there were other Sahaba like the Badi just now who said, I'll just pray and fast, pray the 5 prayers, fast Ramadan and give my zakat, and I will not increase on this ever. I will not. And Rasulullah didn't stop him from doing so. He allowed him from doing so. There's another hadith about a man who his companion owed him money. And the companion asked him, could you let me, could you just, waiver off the amount that I owe you? And the man said, no, I swear by Allah, I will never waiver off the amount. And the Rasul came out and he scolded the companion and said that, who is the one who swears by Allah that he will not do something of goodness, that waiver off a debt. Whereas for the man just now we saw, who said, and I swear by Allah, I will not increase on this. I will only do this, I will not increase, I will not decrease from what you say. Prayer, fasting, zakat, that's all. I'm going to focus on that. So for the Bedouin, Rasul allowed it. He didn't say anything. But for the other man, the Sahaba who said, I will not waiver off the debt. And it's not wrong for him to not want to waiver off the debts, right? It's not wrong on him because it's his right, it's his debt. There's debt that is on him. But Rasulullah did not allow it. Because that Sahaba had a higher potential. He could reach higher. So some said, do not do that. But, do what is good and waiver off the debt. So you see that, the different Sahaba, different answers from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So alternatively, he informed the questioner about that which was more virtuous than other deeds at the time of his question. For example, jihad was the most virtuous of deeds in the beginning because it was the means towards the upholding and fulfillment of other deeds. Various proofs support each other in showing that salah is more virtuous than zakah. However, at the time of seeing the needs of a person who is in distress, zakah is more virtuous. So even when it comes to the deeds, which is more virtuous than other deeds, it is also with respect to the person and with respect to the time that you're in. So some people, zakat is more virtuous than prayer, because they are in a place whereby people are in poverty. And for some people, prayer is more virtuous than zakat, which is usually the case. Prayer is usually more virtuous than zakat. So depending on what is the need of the community, you focus on that. Some of the differences in this regard could be attributed to the differences in the words of the questioners and in the consideration given by Rasulullah to various reasons which demanded preference. These are not confined to one specific attribute or dimension, but diverse in nature. Further, the rank and status of virtue and good are different. Hence, the differences in reply in some ahadith could be based on the consideration which Rasulullah gave to the individual differences between the various pretexts of preference and virtue. It is not appropriate to explain this at this juncture, right? So he's applying the knowledge here. So he's going deeper into the hadith, right? Saying that, why is it that Rasulullah gave different answers to different questions? To the same question, he gave different answers. And you could say, there are many reasons why this is so, right? It could be the nature of the question, the way it was asked, the nature of the person, his background, his state, and all that. And he says that this is actually a vast topic in hadith, right? So we don't actually go into it at this point. But the lesson that we learn here is that every student is treated individually. And that will be the most beneficial for students when they're able to be treated individually. It suffices to say that Rasulullah taught and guided to the right way with insight and foresight. He enlightened people according to their needs and what was appropriate for them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send situation and peace upon him and his family. Right? So it is. So you see that the teacher, right, needs to know the student in the first place. Because how do you give advice, especially? How do you teach if you're not aware of your student? So the first thing that every teacher should do when they have a student is to assess. I straight away assess their ability. And so whenever you get like for me, I get tuition, and the first thing I do is get them to bring me the exam paper. Bring me your previous exam paper. I want to see. So from there, I won't ask them what they know, what they don't know. But give me your exam paper, and I will see for myself. What is your problem? What is your issue? Is it that you don't understand the topic, or you're careless, or you're slow? Because there are students whose issue is not understanding nor carelessness. They are just slow in answering the question. They're very slow at thinking and writing. Right? So you look at the paper, you can tell straight away what's the problem with the student. Right? And then from there, I can assess. And from there, I will tailor my tutoring or my teaching with respect to the student. And what they are what they are strong in, I won't waste time on. But what they are weak in, I will focus on. Right? So there is a way, every child, you look at what they need. So not every student needs to undergo drills when it comes to teaching. Not everyone needs to undergo drills, because for some of them, a lot of homework is not what most people actually, or some people actually need. Some people, they need timing. They actually train them on timing. Right? So they need to be able to pace themselves throughout the paper. Some of them, right, is basically carelessness. So there is actually a method to actually remove carelessness. So drilling, right, will not help. But there is another method that I actually do use to actually remove carelessness from a person. So they will not be careless. Because careless usually is based on someone trying to finish it fast, right, or someone just not focused in their. And usually the carelessness is the same carelessness over and over again. The same thing over and over again. Right? So for that person, they need to learn the carelessness. They must learn where they tend to be careless. Right? So then from there it will address. Right? So sometimes it's not a one size fits all situation when it comes to teaching. And this chapter really informs us that, alhamdulillah, we will finish the chapter, inshallah. We will continue the next part, the next time round. Alhamdulillah. Right, sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Al-Fatiha. Anna Allah yarzuqna amalna fi maqasim. ستعني لا الهدى ويصلي بقومنا وسبع وسلم الأرواح المعالمين ومشايخنا وذوي الحقوق علينا وإلى حضر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Can I say something? On Tuesday, next Tuesday, when the boy is around, from Second House to the 5 p.m. correct? So,
Is that Tuesday?
Tuesday? Wait, I'm sorry.
Weda.
So, you will be around? Would he be around when he was coming?
But I have to go and check again with Veda again. But it should be okay, inshallah.
So,
She can send her there, is it?
can I? Can.
Just put your name now. Give me your email. I will
Okay.
add you there.
Alright,
Okay.
inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
Please let me know the rules and don'ts.
No, it's however it's easy. It's very easy. Okay.
Then I'll try to see whether the next one will be on Friday morning. This one, home is like whose home?
Her home.
Which is
At Bedok Reservoir. Should be Bedok Reservoir. So where she lives, the lessons will be there.
okay. So from this fetch from.
That means here from home, it's all at home, eh? That means Aida is doing this one, is it? She's going to Hanan's house. That means here there's nothing lah. Basically, Aida is taking her from. No, from home to Hanan's house there's nobody.
Oh, home to Hannah's house.
No, there's nobody there. Aida is taking from Hanan's house to Halima's house.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Like fetch you first and fetch. Or you already be.
Yes, I might live with her. I'll be living with her.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I might live in.
Also say about Aisha this morning.
Huh?
Also say about Aisha's.
No. She was very excited about the. Oh, was it Niat? No, it was Zikir. She was kept dancing. She and Fatima, two of them. But the two of them, they kept dancing. I don't know why they were dancing during the Zikir part. They were not following me, but they were dancing their own dance.
They were following each other.
Yeah, they were following each other. She and Fatima. Had to focus them. I'm trying to think whether this mat is we should change it in a bit because they keep pushing each other now. Yeah, and I understand why, because those at the third row can't really see. So I'm using the higher board now. Yeah, so see how lah if I'm able to to have a different way of the mat, or to make it more, lengthwise, like 2 rows only. Like the third row is the people who don't want actually to be in the row. So there you go. Yeah, I'm just gonna see. Yeah, like a longer mat. Because they all don't want to be in third row. And those in third row tend to be distracted also. So when they're sitting all the way back, they're not paying attention, they're talking to each other. Like a classroom, in this classroom. The more the farther they are from the teacher, the more they are distracted. Fun.
If there's any point of time where you want to be with Hamaban, don't you like use the car weekdays?
Tahu.
Just let me know. I'll pass the car to you and you can drive.
Lambat tadi.
Oh no, it's okay.
Bila you free to teach, or when can I take
Tuition What days is she okay?
She's not sure because she just got her confirmation CCA dengan subjects. So she asked me when is the date.
Right now, I'm trying to arrange my students to be on the same day. Right now I have 3 people who are asking, but I've not confirmed any of them yet. Right, so I'm trying to make sure that they're on the same day. So I have it like one session. So I have a few sessions. One session. I have 3 sessions. Weekday evening, yes. Weekday evening. That's why I try to get what is she free. Then I will. But basically the days that I am only looking at is Tuesday or Wednesday. Tuesday or Wednesday. Let's see. Yeah, Tuesday or Wednesday. 5 to 7. Then I'll try and match her with somebody. See how. Does she finish school late tak? Does she finish school late? I have one. Itulah. I have one student who is asking for after Maghrib. I'm not keen actually. I tak suka after Maghrib. Yeah, that's why because kalau after Maghrib that means we start around 8. 8 that means habis 9:30 or 10. So I actually not keen. But then the student CCA every day. CCA and remedial every day. That's why lah. But then I was like, kalau ada remedial every day dah okay dah remedial. And then cakap tak, kena tuition so. Because if you having remedial every day, that's your tuition apa? Kan? By right that should be. That's why lah. By right that should be. If you have remedial every day, that's your tuition every day lah. Your remedial. And you still need tuition after your remedial. And like, well, the person say need it, still need it.
So like one day you teach whole subject, I mean subject required or focus in one day one subject, different subject?
No, I can change depending on what she wants to do. Especially if it's topics that she can understand, then I will go from very different lain lah. Tengok the student. So it can be several subjects in the same day, or it can be one, depending on the subject itself and what she needs. Depending on her needs lah. Depending on her needs.
So it's 4 times per lesson, I mean so 4 times per month.
Yes.
How much is that?
160
160.
for 4 lessons.
No matter how many subject.
No matter how many subject.
In
Yeah,
that
so,
lesson.
yeah, but essentially it's about 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah. If she's alone, then it's 1.5 hours because all the attention on her. But if she's with somebody else, that to put in a group, then 2 hours.
Basically, I think she needs the maths and science.
Maths and science, huh?
Yesterday the result came, right? And she's quite ambitious. Push me already, even more when the tuition.
Okay.
InsyaAllah.
Right, when Tuesday or Wednesday.
Next week belum boleh kan?
Next week, Hababa datang.
yeah,
After Hababa leaves. Yeah, I need to do it after Hababa leaves. So lah, this is no time. That's why like I'm trying to see when I should start because Hababa is coming.
You said, what's it this?
Bukit Panjang.
Bukit Panjang
They are going to be at Bedok. But then I have not made the poster yet. The one is under me lah. Under Bukit Panjang is Ustazah Halimah. That's under her. So under me is Suzan. We'll see how lah. If maybe some days I can give tuition. Because if Ustazah Halimah is handling, then I don't have to be there.
Tapi yang next week you'll be there alone also, right? I mean, let's say if there's a class here, the timing then you
No, so that means all of our classes will be cancelled.
for next week.
Yes, because our bar is around. It'll be cancelled.
I should make my arrangement also.
Yeah, I will announce. Inshallah. Because our bar is around. Okay, so we have fun. Mm-hmm.